First of all, this is an interim meeting and basically a single topic meeting, as we discussed in the last meeting. Ken, I don't believe you've had time to get the meeting minutes out from the last one.
No,
and I don't think
did.
Did
I
he?
thought I did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I regret to say that
Bob,
Outlook
you didn't
is
have
crashed.
time to review them.
No, my Outlook has crashed, and so I apologize. Many emails that I have sent have not actually gone out, and I have to go out to my server to find anything coming in. So
That's
if I'm a little
okay.
slower
That's
than
okay.
usual,
No
that's the
problem.
reason. Time for a new computer.
No problem at all.
This one's 7 years old now. I guess that's twice its normal age.
Well, I can make a motion to approve Ken's minutes because I reviewed them. They look good to me.
Oh, I didn't get them. So I can't.
Who was the other who didn't? Penny?
Oh, no, I think I did. I'm sorry, my mistake. I'll second it. I'm a little slow.
Having read them very thoroughly, right?
No, I don't remember if I read them, but Ken writes excellent minutes.
Okay. Okay, in a motion of faith, do I hear a second?
Well, Penny was the
second it.
second. Brian was the
Second.
first.
I'm a motion of faith.
Well, I
Okay,
thought Brian did already moved it, but okay.
that's fine.
You just tell me who it is.
Okay, Brian moved it, Penny seconded it.
Great.
And now we're going to have a very brief discussion. Are there any comments?
No.
Hearing none. Those in favor of accepting the minutes, say aye.
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 Okay, any nays? And any abstentions?
One abstention.
Okay,
Whoops, I'm not, I haven't, yes, I haven't. I don't, no.
okay. Everybody should have the agenda. The first thing is just a little review of where we have gone since the last meeting 2 weeks ago. We did have an informational session that was chaired by Doug Story. We put together a very brief presentation for that. And thanks to Doug's kindness, we reviewed that with the people who were on it. I guess there, Brian, what, 15, 20 people? It wasn't a huge crowd, but it was a useful information center. And then following that, last Monday, we were at the town meeting. Valerie put together a great map, very large size. Thankfully, there wasn't a lot of wind, so it remained essentially in the same place. And what we did was have people coming into the town meeting at the entrance and registration take little Post-it dots and identify where they're from in town, which gives us a sense of where the people are from who were at the town meeting. One of the humorous elements of that activity was the fact that a number of people had a great deal of difficulty finding out where they lived. But
They
finally
had fun doing it. And they all had fun doing it.
They really did. It was great. It was, it
That's
was
good PR for us.
a little guided 2D tour of Bolton.
Where do we have, like, is that somewhere where we can see it?
I can take a photo of it and try to
Yeah, I got there too.
upload it somehow. This is another plug for getting a large scale printer and scanner.
Thank you, Valerie. Keep it
Yep.
up. We'll get there someday. And so that's where we are in terms of interface with the town. A couple of moderate public outreach activities. So the next thing, and the most critical thing, the reason for this meeting, is the public forum. So Valerie put together, I think, as everybody has seen, at least the first draft, if not the second draft, of the proposed outline of the agenda and approach to a public forum, regardless of where it takes place. But I think at this point, we can hold off on that for a very brief moment and talk a little bit about a conversation that we had with Ralph Wilmer of MAPC. I know Valerie and Brian took extremely good notes. It was the first time in my experience that I was on 2 Zooms at the same time, so my notes weren't very good. But Brian, Valerie, you want to hop in here and talk a bit about what we asked and what his feedback was, as well as his unsolicited advice?
Go ahead, Valerie.
Oh, no, okay. Yeah, so I think that we really went over that agenda, like Bob was saying. He had some good feedback that was quite broad, and also some more detailed information about suggestions for how to lay out the stations around the room and what those stations should be. Overall, he was saying that perhaps this forum is going to be a little bit longer than what we had anticipated. So we should be looking for ways of shortening it, or perhaps just acknowledging that it's going to be longer than 2 hours. He mentioned I think that he really did appreciate the work that we had put into the agenda. I felt like he kind of validated the general direction that we were going in. And the approach, the working through existing conditions and a vision statement and having these more interactive stations. He did have some feedback on what should be first, or how to shorten it a little bit. So I'm not sure how much detail we should go into about some of that now. Before I can kind of make some updates to the agenda and then circulate that again, just to really represent what we heard from Ralph.
Those
He
seem
gave
to make
us,
sense.
yeah, he gave us specific questions that we should ask of the residents while they engage with certain stations. So some good ideas about transit or mobility questions or housing questions. The idea of not doing 2 different vision sessions, but really doing that as one large chunk of time where people can engage with stations, rather than coming back and forth between presentation, debrief, and that more interactive piece. So he had some great suggestions for how to streamline things, which is really what I was taking from it. And he did acknowledge that there might be the opportunity, there likely is the opportunity for someone from MAPC, if not himself, to be able to be present at the meeting. That could be someone who's stationed at a poster or at a station, so that people can ask them questions, or they can provide information about how Bolton's needs relate to the needs of the region and the needs of the state. Or perhaps they could even provide some sort of comment during the introduction. So, Brian, I don't know if you want to add some things to that.
Sure. No, I'll just to give people a sense of, I think, the overall flow that he's recommending is, like, if we really wanted to try to keep this to 2 hours on like a Saturday around lunch, hopefully with food trucks, then what we could do is people could get some food before we start. We open with like a plenary session where everybody's under the same tent, and we've got a big screen with slides, a slide deck that we can run through. We'll do some basic introductions. He does think it's a good idea to begin with just a general discussion of why master plans are valuable. And he suggested including a slide that kind of shows check marks next to some of the biggest things that we accomplished from our 2006 plan, just to show that Bolton has a track record of following through on plans that it creates. And then sort of using the rest of that plenary session, everyone being together, kind of going through maybe about 10 slides where, and this is actually, I think, where the task groups are going to have some real thinking to do between now and the forum. We want to prepare 10 slides that can do double duty. So we want like one very information-rich slide, basically for each task group. We could combine a couple, but and what the slide will do is it'll give it'll have some information about existing conditions, so we can present that in the initial opening session. But it should also have some information that can prompt interaction with the residents when we have our breakouts, because what we want to do is to take the slides and then blow them up. And then that'll be kind of like the visual at each station. And then after that first plenary session is over, which maybe would be 15 or so minutes, then we have like 45 minutes or so where people are just kind of going around interacting. Then we kind of come back together all at the end and have like a wrap-up discussion. And also at that point, I think he did think it would be a good idea to present our draft of the vision so far, but to explain that the vision is something that we plan to share at every public forum, and we want to show how it changes and evolves in response to public input. And that was the other thing I did want to mention. He said, it's probably a good idea to plan on having 3 or 4 public forums over the course of our whole outreach. So this is the intro, and then we might have the second and third one focus on, 3 big topics each, sort of like the meat and potatoes of the master plan. And then the last one is sort of wrapping everything together and packaging it and laying out the vision for implementation. But at each of those public forums, we can show like, we started off here with our vision, and now this is like at the very end, like this is what we want to set in stone, and we've listened to you and we've incorporated feedback. Yeah, so I think probably the most significant action item for everybody to just start thinking about is, what do you want your slide to be?
And I think getting back to your point, it need not be broken out by individual task groups. I think we are necessarily going to have to combine them. And I think, Brian, what you would put up as an example of the grouping of topics that might be appropriate have you got that visual that you had provided earlier?
I don't think I do have it handy. I'm sorry.
Okay, but that was the bottom line, that, we have somewhat artificially broken up our task groups into very, very specific areas. But there are too many of them really to have those as individual stations. So we need to think about grouping them. But I think starting with what are the slides that you would like, or what are the topics, the key things that each individual task group would like, then we can talk very quickly about how to meld some of those into a smaller number, like, I don't know, 7 or so, I think was the kind of number we were looking at, maybe less. Valerie, do you want to just briefly walk through your agenda? Even the most recent draft, I think, would be best if you have it available.
I have not updated it since the discussion with
No, that's okay. I think
Ralph.
we can get a pretty good sense of where things are with what you have already. The other thing that we have to talk about immediately is date and venue, because if we're talking about the beginning of July, end of June period, we have precious little time to get going with a public relations outreach to let people know what's coming.
Yes, and along those lines, I did reach out to Rob with Neshoba Schools, and he let me know of 3 locations that they have tents at. But of course, the last day of school is June 23rd. And it's going to be, so they'll be taking down the tents after that. And it would be apparently harder to schedule a forum at the high school after graduation, because there's a production studio filming there in the summer. So from the doodle poll I had sent out, it looks like from about June 19th on, about every Saturday looks like the most availability, but that's only a poll of about 6 of us, myself included. So I think, Saturday, June 19th would be the only date that we would be able to have access to those tents outside. Other than that, June 26th, July 10th, those would all be potentials for holding it in at the town commons.
Okay, and we still have the possibility of doing it in the Florence Sawyer cafeteria at that time.
Yes.
It would be great to have it outside. I think.
Are the tents at Florence Sawyer?
Yes, there's a
Okay.
tent at, I think, it's called Derby Field at Florence, and then
Yeah, okay,
also one at Emerson across from a ball field,
okay.
or in a ball field. I am hesitant to have it indoors, even though I know our COVID numbers are low. I think, I don't know, I think that it just provides a little bit more peace of mind and allows for a little bit more flexibility with hosting perhaps a lot of people, to be able to hold it outside or in a tent outside. So, so my preference is June 19th, I think, is probably too soon, given the amount of work that would need to really go into this PowerPoint, as well as the stations around the room or tent. So I'm thinking June 26th, July 10th might be good dates to keep in our minds, and really looking at the town common as the option, with a rain date as well.
I like the idea of doing it at the common, and I think if we, I've reached out to somebody at the Bolton Community Fund, and I want to have a conversation with them about getting help. But I think the pavilion is basically almost the same size as the tents that I've seen at the school,
Right.
and then if we had, I know for Backyard Bolton, the vendors often bring like small tented stations. I don't know where they get those. I don't know if they own them, but I wonder if people might be willing to lend them for the effort. And we could
I know
use,
the COA has a tent, Brian.
Yeah, typically they own them, but they're generally willing to lend them. Standard 10 by 10 pop-ups.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if we could have the whole presentation, thanks, Nikki. If we have the presentation in the pavilion and then perhaps have stations outside so it's not really congested, with 7 or 8 stations. And it would be, I think, and Nikki, you may want to comment on this, in terms of AV infrastructure, I think the common works fine in the pavilion. Have you done any filming there? Well, I'm not sure we want to stream it. But that would be very nice, but without really solid Wi-Fi, which isn't going to come until after June 30th, with the police putting in the connection there.
But they're not putting in Wi-Fi, they're just putting in their own thing.
Theirs is their own
Nobody
thing,
else,
Bob. It
nobody
doesn't
else
connect.
wants Wi-Fi there.
I guess I'm alone.
Well, no, I'm
Yeah,
with
no.
you, Bob, I'm with you. But the town government believes that it's unnecessary because Joan Finger is the only person who wants it for her women's business network. I kid you not. So,
No, I think
in
a
all
lot of
reality-
people want it. A lot of people want it. They weren't given the option to vote for it. I
right,
mean,
what I'm saying is people within the town government take that view, and so it's never been put forward on anybody's budget to be allowed to vote on.
But to defend Joan Finger, she's the only one who's been the squeaky wheel.
Okay, well, it's academic right now.
Right.
Right, exactly,
well,
Bumper's thing is not open to anybody else. It's an closed system.
right.
I guess let me ask a question of Nikki, since we have the benefit of her being here. If we wanted to have a slide PowerPoint that was projected on a large screen, would we need a hotspot for that if it's like on a local computer? Okay.
Okay, if necessary, the Bolton Conservation Trust still has mine. And we have an 8-foot screen up in the trust office that could be used as well.
So Mr. Romer is on.
Right. No. And it may be worthwhile talking to Bob anyway, because he may have a much more powerful projector than we have. Because it's during the day, it's going to be a challenge, even if it is cloudy. I know. Okay, so why don't we all agree that we have a venue, we're going to reserve the venue, we're going to work on the infrastructure necessary to make the venue work, and we're going to establish a date. And those things will now allow us to move forward with our public relations and outreach program. So,
Are we
Valerie,
picking a date tonight?
I'm sorry,
Are we picking a date tonight?
I would highly recommend it.
Can I weigh in on that for just a second? I have to just apologize because whatever it's called that you sent out, for some reason, I'm one of the 6 who didn't weigh in, or however many. Anyway, I didn't get that, and I apologize, or I didn't see it rather. But I have a wedding, a big wedding, and I'm not going to be here the 26th or the 3rd so the 26th of June and the 3rd of July. So personally, my vote would be for July 10th.
Okay, and we're not constrained by tents, so that works. The other issue that was brought up is if we have, because Bolton, like grown-up lemmings, moves to the Cape, we may want to have a second forum. So we may want to think about that, but not now. So let's establish a date. Valerie?
July 10th gives you more time to get your act together.
Right.
Okay. And I will have had some practice because we have the annual general meeting of the Bolton Conservation Trust the previous Sunday. And we are using essentially the same audiovisual display and so forth. So
Previous Sunday meeting the 4th.
The 6th, I guess.
The 4th is a Sunday, though.
Oh, it must be the 4th, Ken. In any case, I will confirm that.
And you're doing it at the Common at the Pavilion?
Yes.
Well,
Is that-
then it sounds like a reasonable time to suggest we take a vote on.
May I make a comment here? It seems if we're talking about people going off on vacation, the week of the 4th is probably one of the biggest ones. So we're talking about the Saturday after the town empties out. So you'll
I
get
thought
folks
the
like,
4th was on a Sunday.
it is, people will take that week,
Maybe
Sunday through the next weekend.
and 2 people
For
are, though.
vacation. But so you'll get the folks who don't have someplace else to go.
Yeah, you're
all
gonna
6
hit-
of us who
you're gonna
stay
hit
here.
vacations. In the summer, you're going to hit vacations anyway. So
Yeah, this is just like a hot one. But just a thought.
either the 10th or
Point
the
that we-
17th is okay.
Okay, so
Yeah.
Brian has
Yeah,
suggested the
17th.
17th. So I think the point is well made.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
people will be taking that week off.
Okay.
So we'll go with the 17th. It'll be at the town common. We need to reserve that.
Does everybody agree?
A vote,
Vote?
nodding.
Fine.
Nod?
Yeah, I mean,
That's fine.
yeah, okay.
I think you got enough
Any
nod.
dissenters, yell. I don't hear any dissenters. Thank you. Okay, so we have the where and the when and the timing. We're talking about morning or afternoon.
We had said, I think around lunchtime, right? So if the idea is to have folks be able to come, grab some food from a food truck, and then kind of settle into a presentation, we could say it's at 12:30 or 1. Let's
1
say
to
1.
4, I think is a good, 1 to 4 has always worked.
Yeah.
So that gives us 3 hours and we probably We hopefully won't need that, but I think we ought to depend on that, particularly if we're starting with food trucks.
So I think the idea though would be we would maybe have the food trucks arrive at like 12:30 or 12,
Right.
something like that,
Yeah. I
with
mean,
our start at 1.
Yeah,
Like
that's
the
right.
presentations at 1.
Yep.
Yeah.
So would you plan for 2 hours or 3 hours?
Well, we'll try for 2 hours, but let's see,
Yeah.
we'll have to walk it through.
Yeah.
Um,
Plan it for 3 and see what happens.
Well, plan it for 2 and it will become 3. And one of the things that Ralph brought up and was very valid, and we're in the process, Valerie's streamlining the agenda so that we don't have changes where a 15-minute session, because it's changing to another element of the overall forum, ends up taking another 10 minutes, as in changing classes. So keeping like activities together in a group so that we're not continuously changing and moving people will be a much better way of doing it.
Yep.
So Valerie, you want to walk through it?
Sure. Let me find this document. Okay. All right. Can make this a little bit bigger so you all can see it.
Thank you.
Okay. So we've already kind of gone through most of this here. Date, time, duration. Bob had already spoken about the outreach that we've done already, but it'll be important to pick that back up. Take a look at the list of stakeholders that Penny put together. Ralph had also suggested the creation of a flyer that could also be used essentially as the body of an email, so that when we are emailing committees or boards or neighborhood groups or folks on the stakeholder list, we can just kind of copy paste a pretty standard message.
Oh, let me interrupt. I'm remiss in pointing out that Kia put together an absolutely terrific flyer that we handed out at the town meeting.
Yes.
Kia, could you, after this meeting, distribute that? Kia?
Yes, I can
Thank
do
you.
it right now.
Okay, Valerie, I'm sorry.
No, that's great. Yeah. And so we'll need someone savvy with Facebook. Ralph had mentioned that some towns are even purchasing Facebook ads to be able to run. So I don't know how much that might cost, but that could be an option.
Can I
Abby,
interject?
Well,
Go ahead.
Sorry, I just want to interject really quickly. I think if we've all agreed that we're going to do a forum on Saturday, July 17th at lunchtime on the town common, I think I'd be happy to let Kristen DeJohn know that even later tonight, and she can just start posting on the community Facebook page, and we'll give her more details as it goes on. But I think we should just put that date out there tonight.
I agree.
Yep.
That's great.
And we don't need to pay for anything extra because that has over 3,000 representatives on it, not just all Bolton, but still there are a lot of people that reaches in town. So I think Facebook wise, we're more than covered by what Kristen can do for us.
Do we need to confirm with anyone that the town common's available that day before we post? If it was to
Yeah,
be
that's a
posted
very
tonight?
good point.
That's what we should do.
Definitely.
It's
That's
a
a good
very
point.
popular place.
As much as I want to post it tonight as well.
Yeah, before we post it anywhere, we should check with Parks and Rec.
So whose task will it be to check with Parks and Rec? Is that something I should do, or does someone else have a good?
I don't think you'll go to her till Monday. I don't think she works
Yeah.
on Fridays.
Not many people do.
Mhm. So Monday.
I can check with Lisa.
Okay. She may answer email, in the off
Yeah,
hours too.
And I can check with Ed, who can also check with Lisa probably offline. So that should work out, since he's also a member of master planning.
Great. And another item that Ralph had mentioned too is that, if there is a community group that's not able to be present at this meeting, that's a thought for a second public forum, or simply, a future meeting would be to go to that group directly. So he had the example of, if the COA is not available, a lot of representatives from the COA are not available on that date. We could plan to go to them at another time, and do a brief presentation as well. So let's not get discouraged if there are large community groups or faith groups that are not able to attend. We can always do more targeted work with them afterwards.
But I think as part and parcel of that, Penny's putting together, and I think she's well along the way of identifying a full range of stakeholders in town, and make sure that whatever our outreach program is, that we do things that will specifically get to those stakeholder groups.
Yeah, that's great.
Penny, where are you on that? Where I was when I sent it out to you guys,
Okay,
but I can go back to it and, flush it out a little more, get some phone numbers. Do you want email? Are we doing email? Are we playing question? How are we going to contact these people? Are we going to call them personally? Are we going to email them? Are we going to, how are we going to do this? Are we just going to put on Facebook and say, we'd like a member from your group? Or are we going to, talk to me about how you envision contact? Because I think before you contacted people personally.
yes.
Yeah, I would say all the above.
Yep. But historically, when we did it with the Common and we put together the charrettes, we actually identified people who were key communicators within the stakeholder groups and called them and coordinated with them on the best way to spread the word within their group. So I think person-to-person conversation, follow-up emails is a good way to do it.
So we probably need to divide up the list, because I think I agree with Bob. It's the most effective way.
But I think, we got down to 25 major stakeholder groups, and I think that's a reasonable level.
What? But also,
So-
we're going to get people from town who are just going to come.
Yes, of course.
Mm-hmm.
I
So
hope.
perhaps we should take a look at that list and assign people to whom they should contact based on the people that they know.
Yep.
Yeah.
Agreed. Has everybody seen that list, or?
I don't
I
think
think
so.
it's on the Dropbox.
Is it on the
Oh, it
Dropbox?
is? Okay.
I think it is. Is that how I got it from you, Penny?
I sent it to you. Robert may have put it in the Dropbox because he doesn't allow me in the Dropbox for good reason. But
We'll
I
figure
can
it out.
go down through the list.
If it's not on Dropbox, then please send it to everybody and we can get back to you with who we know. And
Yeah, but that
Who
could
isn't on the
could
list?
get really confusing because we could have 3 people taking the same person. So
well, not if
let me
we,
take a look at the list and then
not if it
sort
gets
of,
coordinated through somebody who's in charge of it.
I guess
Penny,
that'll be,
All I would like to do is look at the list. I don't care who's in charge of it and who I have to tell. I just like to see
Okay.
the list.
okay, so maybe what we should do is send it out to everybody. Say, pick 10 or 15 people that you know, send it back to me. And if I have 8 people knowing one person, then I'll pick one of you to do it. Otherwise, whoever comes up with it back to me, I'll send it back to you and say, this is your list.
Sounds good.
How's
to me.
that sound?
Sounds fine.
Okay, so the way it's going to work is, Penny, you're going to send out the list. People send it back to you. You do the consolidation, come up with who's going to be responsible for each contact, send the
Yeah.
list back out in the next 3 or 4 days. And
I love how Robert just slides in 3 or 4 days.
that's my job. Come on.
I know, no, you can't do that, Robert. Anyhow, I will send it out tomorrow. And or I don't even know if I have the full, I guess I do have the full list. Valerie, do you have a full list of everybody on master planning? If I send it to you,
I can,
will you
yes,
just-
if you send it to me, I can distribute it. You know, and we will need, we can start contacting people, but it would also be good in tandem to begin work on a flyer.
yeah, well, also I think people doing the contacting should be saying the same thing, basically.
That's what I was just gonna ask, is what
You
exactly?
need some kind of, you know, this is what you're going to say to them. This is what you're going to ask them.
Yep.
We don't want 10 different stories confusing people.
Okay, and as far as the list of people to whom this list is going to be sent, I have the complete list of everybody associated with master planning, whether they're on the steering committee or are a member of various task groups. And I think
Well, we could send it to you, Robert, except your computer doesn't like the word.
I have to get a new computer in the next couple of days. So,
All right. Why don't I send it? Are you working tomorrow, Valerie?
Yes.
How about I send it Valerie and she can send it out for the first shot at it?
good.
Sure. When, I should know this too, but when is the next time that the public outreach task group meets?
Well, it was supposed to
Monday.
be Monday, but
Okay.
Abby got back, and I think it's critical because of the social media that she be involved. So
Yep.
I would propose Tuesday.
Okay.
To what time, Bob?
Abby, what works best for you?
3's fine.
Okay,
Okay.
3
so
o'clock?
it's 3 p.m. on Tuesday. I'll send out a Zoom notice.
That's
Um,
great. That should be a meeting where we discuss how exactly what Sasha was saying. So how we're going to
Yeah,
Exactly.
talking points.
introduce this.
Yep.
Yeah, that's great.
And just for tonight, if somebody's is sending something to Bolton Community, just give me the sentence, because I think we should put our logo on it and send it to Kristen.
Yeah, we're not going to do that tonight until we've worked it out with
Oh, okay,
Parks and Rec, all right?
all right.
But
I'm happy-
nonetheless, that's a very good point.
Yeah, I'm happy to work on your flyer.
Great. Having done a very nice job on the last one.
Yeah, I mean, you can take anything off that. I mean, I don't know if that was done very quickly, but it, you know, the left side of that was sort of good.
Yep.
So other
Okay.
outreach we should be doing, just to plan for the fun part of this, would be to try to coordinate which food trucks we want to bring out, and how that's going to work in town. Make
We
sure
have
that
any
we have
food trucks
any.
experts?
I'm happy to
Brian's the
take
food
that on.
truck
I'm happy
guy.
to.
Brian's a food now.
I'll take on the food truck entertainment stuff.
Great. And then I think if folks can think of ideas for raffle prizes, that would be really helpful, particularly if they have a Bolton bent to them.
Remember, we will need a license from Pam to do raffles.
Yeah, that could get
It's
really
not complicated. I did it for the Friends of the Library. It's $10 and it's not, you just have to file the.
No,
Huh.
but my
You know what I mean?
concern is that I don't know if you all know that so somebody's trying to organize a pride parade for like not even a month before in June, and they're going to try to do a raffle then. So I'm afraid that like if we try to do another community raffle too close in time, it might get tough.
Yeah.
Why don't we make it much more folksy and just have what amounts to a door prize?
Yeah, exactly. Put your name in and we'll pick a name and give it to you. No money involved.
Yeah, so
How is that different?
Because money involved, you have to deal with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Oh,
And
I
you
was
have
not,
to
yeah,
report
I'm
your
sorry.
income. You have to report your income against the cost of your raffle and the value of the raffle.
I think I was using the term raffle the way community organizers do, and not a money raffle.
Yeah.
So
it's
I
more
was
a
not
door
antici-
prize raffle, isn't it? I mean,
yes, that's what I had in
Just
mind.
put your name in and yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So just so that nobody's confused, we may just want to change the language.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Okay.
do.
Valerie,
All right. Okay, moving on.
I'm happy to donate a gift certificate I have to the kitchen sink candle thing, to a door prize.
That's
Why
great.
local? Great.
That's great. Okay, so we have four main goals of the public forum. So orienting people to the master plan process, trying to look toward consensus or agreement, at least on a draft vision statement, and to gather feedback on our draft community aspirations, to provide our existing conditions assessment and gain feedback on that, just make sure that there's nothing we have missed, and to kind of get a sense of what is the most surprising, or what is the, what questions people might have from those facts. And then lastly, to look toward those goals and strategies, and collect some feedback on that as well. So the way we have this written out is a brief welcome or introduction. This could be by chair, vice chair of this board or committee, or another community leader, and then go into the master plan process discussion. So what is a master plan? Why is it important? What topics does it cover? What does it not cover? What is the output? Where are we in the process? Bob was referring during our meeting with Ralph that it also might be important to look at what our success rate has been with other implementation of the 2006 master plan. So of the recommendations that came out of that plan, how are we doing? What's our success rate there? And also to note that we have other plans in town that are at a beginning stage, and looking at their, just a very brief, look at what their purpose and their goals are as well. From there, we will go into this existing conditions assessment. So, we still have this idea of a virtual tour. Maybe it's just some photographs. Maybe it's a map on a slide. Maybe it's kind of a zooming tour through Google Earth of key sites in town. And then we'll have this kind of state of the town idea where we're pairing a member of the steering committee with staff to kind of delve into a topic a little bit further. But again, these are just like 2-minute discussions. This is kind of a quick slide. And I'm not quite sure how this might change given what Ralph had described about trying to, put a lot of, he was saying that we could put a lot of this data on a couple of slides, kind of squish it all together, and then maybe have this idea as a station in the room. So I'm not quite sure how this committee might feel about those ideas. Bob, Brian, and I didn't really discuss too much after that meeting with Ralph, but so this could either be in the presentation or this could be an interactive after, is all I'm trying to say. So some suggested topics and pairings here. Ralph was really saying that kind of the top 5 here might be kind of a land use or open space poster or slide. One talking about housing, so the type of housing, median sales prices, type of ownership. A third could be something around transportation and mobility. Where are sidewalks in town? Where are bike lanes? Which we don't have bike lanes, but where would we want bike lanes to be? Where are we seeing the most problems with vehicular traffic? Where do we want greenways to be? Another important topic would be water and sewer infrastructure in town. And then lastly, he said that there, some tax breakdown or a fiscal analysis of where we're at. So again, a way to make this presentation shorter would be to take these all out and put them in the stations, and have a staff member plus a member of this committee kind of manning that station and explaining any data that are on the slide or the map in front of folks, or answering any questions and kind of facilitating a conversation, maybe jotting down some comments that people are making while they're looking at that. From that existing conditions analysis, we're actually just going to move a little bit forward and go right into the vision statement, and present this committee's draft vision statement, get some feedback on that, and then present those draft aspirations. And then we can go back to discussing a bit more about why do we have vision statement? What is this? What is the purpose of this? And we could talk about the evolution of a statement and relate it back to that master plan process. And then after we have a brief discussion about visioning, then we're going to go into these stations around the room, which are going to be both the community aspirations and existing conditions. So again, another time saver is just to lump these two together. So scroll back up and have some of these existing conditions activities. So I'm picturing about, 10, 15 like coreboard posters on easels around the commons, or in the tent, I guess, no, on the commons now. So looking at each of these different kind of key areas, and each group can kind of come up with what they think might be most interesting, focusing a little bit more on what do we know about what is happening now. So where are our trails? Where are the orchards and golf courses? Do we know where our priority development areas are? Where the business district is? And we can come up with some pretty good targeted questions for each of those subject areas. We have some other ideas here. There's all sorts of activities, ways of asking questions, ways of engaging folks with maps, or with SWOT analysis, the strengths, opportunities, weaknesses, threats analysis. So we'll have this going on at the same time as these community aspirations. And so again, this is just an open 30-minute, 40-minute period where people are, assigning themselves to whichever station they want to be at. They can leave whenever they want. They can come back whenever they want. It's pretty free flowing. So no strict order here. So this is from Boxborough's master plan process. This is this idea of kind of voting on different community aspirations that we've discussed at a previous meeting. Some of the stations can be more facilitated. Some can be completely unmanned. This idea of the I wish statement or I wish poem, it's essentially just one large poster with the writing I wish Bolton about 50 times, and participants can just write in what their response might be. You don't need to have a person there. Others might be a bit more of a discussion where we would want to have a facilitator there. And then we would come back for a debrief all together and ask, what did you hear that was surprising to you today? What did you not hear that you thought was going to be a key moment of this forum? What did we miss? What language did we use that really resonated with you? Or what language did we use that did not feel like the community that you know? What concerns do you have about this process in total as well? So I've been talking a lot. So any immediate feedback here on what this looks like? And again, I have not cleaned this up since speaking with Ralph. So
would you mind just stopping the share for a second?
Yes.
I don't know if others have things that they want to chime in on. I just wanted to make an offer, which was that I know that we're planning to meet in 2 weeks, I believe, on Thursday, the 20, whatever it is, 27th.
Yeah.
So if people would like, I would be happy to basically try to take everything that we've discussed tonight and convert Valerie's, well, if we confirm the space, convert Valerie's outline plus Ralph's input into an actual like map and plan of like the exact show with timing and who's doing what and suggested assignments. So then we can hash it out on the 27th, but that we have like, I want it to be as like concrete as possible for like how it would look and where things would be and who would say what when. Would that be helpful? Is that like too heavy-handed?
Oh,
No,
I
I
think
think
it's a
it's
brilliant
necessary.
idea.
It's necessary.
Yes, absolutely.
I think it would be helpful too, just so we know what the blank spaces are. So what is at that point, we'll be able to say what a concrete action is that someone specifically can take on, which would be really helpful.
I suggest we
that'd be
take
nice.
Brian up on his suggestion, right, Valerie?
Absolutely.
Always.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, one thing I would say is that what you're going to need to look at, Brian, is the high-level guidance that they got from Ralph is a bit different in timing and so forth than what Valerie gave to us. And so I think that those two things need to be reconciled.
Yeah.
And you should think about how many times people are going to get up and down or how many times you're going to come back together.
Yeah.
Because in the original thing that was mentioned, we basically start together, go to the stations, and then come back. This sounds like much more than that. So I think you're going to have to think about the logistics of that and how it works out with everybody.
And that was Ralph's recommendation that we,
Yeah.
you know, inter-class transition needs to be absolutely minimized.
Or the keep it simple, stupid
Yeah.
theory.
Yeah.
But Brian, I think that's a great, it's an absolutely necessary idea. We really need to know who's going to do what and what's missing and bring together very distinct specifics about doing it. The other thing that I'm thinking about with the individual stations, I think we need to think within an individual station about how to develop a narrative with people who visit it and ask questions to gain their input. You know, that having spent much of my last couple of days working with interpreters who spend a lot of their time figuring out how to get people to talk and ask specific questions, but in a way that allows people to broaden the discussion. So very
Yeah.
few of us, including me, are not trained to do that.
Each station will have some guidance about being an output and an input.
Exactly.
It would be good. It would be good if each station had a passive interaction as well as a real person. I mean, like if for people who, if I walked into a station and one person was talking animatedly with one of our staff, that there's also a flip chart where I can read the question that you're wanting answered and I can write an answer and move on to the next station because I've only got 10 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, you do it like a sales show. I mean, you have a backdrop of useful information and then a person there to engage whoever's coming in.
Are we presuming that people will be moving from station to station?
Yes,
Yeah, I would think so.
in varying degrees.
Okay, it didn't sound like that, so
No, no,
it sounded
that's-
as if, okay.
That was
I
fully
would
intended.
think, yeah.
Yes,
And the
it's
more we can get them to write as well as talk, writing and sticking stickies on posters or writing on flip charts is really good because we've got that as our documentation to read later.
Right.
Yeah, we have to think about the other end of this. So how are we going to code the responses that we've gotten, or how are we going to, quantify the types of responses that we get. So definitely thinking about the types of questions that we ask. I know that this group already went through that with the surveys. It's really important to make sure that you know exactly what is meant by the answers that you're given.
Yep.
So we'll
And
want
ask
to
the
do that,
questions
and-
with that in mind.
Yep.
And I think it has to be consistent across stations. The
So
sort of-
a big topic for that is this vocabulary when we talk about the town center. I mean, I think it's time that we as a group started talking about a business town center, and also when you're talking about the neighborhood I live in, calling it the historic town center. Because that sometimes overlaps, but other times it does not overlap.
I think that we actually had this discussion. I remember hearing someone, I forget who, just describe wanting to have a station that might ask this question of, what does the concept of a town center mean to you? And thinking about this either whether you're interacting with a map and trying to draw out your vision of where town center is, or if you're commenting, writing a note somewhere on what that means to you, where you can get at economic center versus cultural center versus historic center. So I do have that note, but that's something that the group wants to see. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, and
one-
Mark and I were in a conversation with the water and sewer group about that exact issue. If we're talking about water and sewer, we need to understand, first of all, the perspective of EDC and their perspective on what constitutes town center from an economic development perspective. And then on top of that, if we're having an overlay multi-use district, well, what does that mean? What's going to be there? How extensive is it going to be? Those things. And I think that's something that we want to explore. We don't want to dictate, but just starting with a map and asking people, well, what do you think a town center needs to be? And then articulating the various types, genre of town center that we were talking about, whether that's historic, community, economic, etc.
Does EDC have a definition now?
No, they don't.
Oh, that's
I've
good.
asked the question.
That's good.
I've also asked them about what the overlay is all about. And that's very, very important. It's very important generally. But when we're talking about infrastructure, it's very important.
Bob, one thing, Val, we need to make sure we do, just popped into my head, is that we need to check with Trinity about parking
Yes, that's a very good point.
and request parking to be able to
Yep.
park that day at Trinity at the church,
Oh,
Yes.
Okay.
because we
that's-
don't have enough parking to park at the common.
And it would be
Now-
useful working with Ed as well. Or Brian, you may want to ask Lisa what the schedule is for sports on the field as well, because that's a prospective parking area that we've used in the past.
And the library, I'm sure, the library and the Houghton building can also handle some on a Saturday. Nothing much going on there.
Yeah, the library's closer than the Houghton. Yeah.
Yeah, just make
town
sure that we
hall.
coordinate with the library.
Yeah,
It was my commitment when we put the common together that we would always work with the library and advise them.
Well, I'll call Kelly because I have to talk to her tomorrow anyhow.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? And this just might not be me understanding, but I want to make sure I'm clear. When we have the public forum, we're inviting stakeholders to come and set up booths, as well as we're going to have our own master planning booths. Am I
No.
understanding?
No,
No,
Okay,
you're not.
so
No.
it's the only booths that are going to be booths, if you will be master planning sponsored booths and
yeah,
information.
we want to maintain that focus.
Yep,
The-
great.
the-
That's what I was wondering.
The
Okay,
only distraction is food.
The
Perfect.
idea of getting stakeholders is to get people to come,
Yeah,
not for them to sell them whatever it is they're doing, but to get them to come and have their people come.
and weigh in.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
representative-
I just wasn't sure how far we were going with that weigh-in, if you will.
Also to represent whatever group they're with or representing, to represent the points of view of that group and
Perfect.
the things that are important to that group.
Wonderful. Got it. Thank you.
And that's exactly what we did with the town common when we ran the
Mhm.
charrettes. We made sure that we had input from everybody's perspective.
Yeah, those were great. I remember that.
Okay, I think we have at least a wrap on the beginning of a plan. And Brian, we look forward. Penny, you and I can work together on the stakeholder summary, and I have a lot of information, contact information. And
And Robert does
Valerie-
like to set short deadlines.
right, and you keep telling me to delegate. I just did it. You won't
Yeah, I
take it.
know, and I just told you.
And Valerie, in Dropbox, of course, under the steering committee is a file of contact information for everybody. I will commit tonight to dig into that using my wife's computer and update that list to reflect the current situation. But that's got everything, emails, telephone numbers, et cetera, for everybody in this crew. Okay, Brian, you want to talk about the draft action spreadsheet?
Sure, and I'm going to go through that just pretty quickly because I have managed to touch base with almost all of the task group leaders who at this point are the primary audience for this. But hold on one second. Let me just share my screen. I think Valerie or whoever is the owner.
Let me find it. There we go. Okay, you should be able to now.
Okay. Well, I'll say actually before I do, I'm just going to remind everyone that at the last meeting, we kind of talked about actions, well, vision, actions, goals, strategy, vision, aspirations, goals, strategies, and actions, actions being the most specific level of recommendation that'll be included in the master plan. And so what we're doing with this document is actually, I'll zoom in, we're starting at the more specific level. So in this column right here, we have about 140 proposed actions. These are all drafts at this point, but they're things that could ultimately be included in the final version of our master plan, potentially. So we're taking those, and then each task group is basically indicating in these columns whether they think the proposed action is sort of within, generally speaking, their subject area. What we're trying to do is to show overlap, which should influence the way that we write these actions up in the master plan, and also how we work backwards to frame the strategies and goals, because strategies, especially at the level of strategy or aspiration, they're going to be cutting across multiple task groups. So we're trying to be able to see how those fit in. This is a column right here where the task group leaders so far can be putting some comments, and people just started working on this over the past couple of days. So we don't have much yet. And then the task group leaders at this point are also starting to add their own proposed actions. So anyway, this is a working document. I'll share the link. It's a Google Doc. I'll share the link with everybody on the steering committee. But right now, the task group leaders are kind of going through, taking the first pass. And over the next several months, we're going to kind of use this to work back into the strategies and the goals and the aspirations. Anyway, I just wanted to present it quickly. I will send out the link, and I'm happy to answer questions if people are curious as to why we're taking this approach.
Brian, I understand why. And one of the things I'm wrestling with, I downloaded this and went through initially economic development and kind of got into the 6 degrees of separation and ended up with way too many X's. You know, every time I looked at an action, yeah, that either was going to require input from or have some impact on economic development. So any guidance you can provide on, you know, how much overlap do you want?
I mean, I would say be over inclusive. I actually think economic development, especially in a town like Bolton, where we try to have economic development that fits with our agriculture and our recreation, like it does that whole concept touches on so many of the other areas.
I noticed.
You know, I'm not sure that economic development necessarily has anything in particular to say about, I don't know, I'm just gonna pull something out like
Schools.
yeah, I don't know, or like even like internal town hall communications. Like we might have an action related to that, but I don't know that it's economic development. But if you have a lot of X's under economic development, I think that's appropriate.
Okay, because there are.
So can you hear me? I am here. I'm working through Larry's phone. But Bob, I had the same problem. I started and I downloaded it too. And I started to find myself putting X's everywhere. Would it make sense if in the comment section, you could put, you know, overlaps with another task group, you know, and to what degree it does? Does that make sense?
Yeah, or you know, I think if you think that there's something that like is really, really strongly in your wheelhouse, you could make a comment about that. I think if you start to try to comment on everything that you think has some overlap with other task groups, you're just going to be putting a lot of comments in. So maybe comment on the things that you think are most like at your core.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Brian, one approach that I've used in the past in relationship matrices is to address what Mary just talked about by using numbers. If there's a very strong overlap, you know, you have a high number 3. If it touches it, it's 1. If it doesn't really touch it at all, forget it. So,
Yeah, my feeling is like,
that gets
I don't
very
know.
complicated.
Yeah, right. At this point, I just rather let's stick with the X's.
Yeah.
So, all right, I'm gonna go ahead.
I was just going to say that the proposed actions that you're getting from the climate action group are all individuals, because that committee has yet to actually discuss actions. We were about to discuss the results of our data gathering when this proposal stopped the conversations. So I'd like there to be a possibility that if that committee gets a chance to actually talk with each other about what its proposals are, that we might add some items here.
Oh yeah,
At
and
this point, it is the free thoughts of the individual members of the committee, not the conclusions of the committee.
yeah, I hear that.
And that's true almost across the board. It is true across the board. But I think if a member or two of the committee goes through and puts X's in as a good starting point, then you can have a conversation about the validity of those X's and then start adding additional actions that other people on the committee feel are appropriate.
I think, actually, I'm the sample here that Brian asked me to take a whack at it, and I just did it for about 20 minutes earlier this afternoon. And I started adding things that have nothing to do with the committees that I'm on. So, I mean, I do think this is open to everyone at this point, because it's a way to throw some ideas out there, and they're going to sink or swim over the course of all our meetings, our task group conversations, and our forums. But Sharon, you're absolutely right. I mean, I didn't think there were enough climate change things on there, so I started putting some, but you should put some more. I mean, anyone can put them up. I mean, because I had just come back from town meeting, I put up something on dark skies. I mean, I don't even know where that belongs, but I think this document is quite open. So
Yeah.
go for it.
Again, but I would suggest that our committee, well, as all of them are we're not simply an aggregate of folks who are going to have a conversation. We have data. We have to decide, what do the data tell us, and therefore come up with some proposals on that. And so just, I mean, I can generate ideas till the cows come home, but I shouldn't be the one doing that without the group talking. There's a reason why we have a group to talk about what we conclude from the data that we have and the challenges that we're facing, that we want to put a focus on.
I totally hear that, and I think maybe the way that I would imagine things play out is, if everybody from the task group is taking a look and figuring out what they think is within the realm of the task group, then that kind of, then you basically sort by that variable on the spreadsheet, and then that gives you a universe of 37 proposed actions that then you apply the collective data to, and then you kind of really start to dig in and figure out what you want to really focus on going forward. Does that make sense?
No, it doesn't actually. So I'm thinking not scientifically. I mean, I'm used to doing something in which you gather data, and then you look to see what the data tell you, and then you make your decisions based on that. You don't simply throw out a whole bunch of ideas and then play with them. The data need to drive this, and I think we have a very interesting little addition. One of the things that Kia did was to share with us a report that was in the Harvard paper of their conservation. What is it called? It's called their strategic. I can't remember its name, but anyhow, they've been they have contracted with a research group to look at the effects of climate on the town of Harvard, which is very much like ours. And they came up with, their research people came up with 4 environmental hazards that are going to be the most critical for Harvard, which are probably the same for us. And it's pests and invasive species, extreme precipitation, extreme temperatures and temperature swings, and ice storms. Okay. We hadn't talked about any of those things, but we've been given permission. It's really nice. I talked to Don Lowe, who talked to the Harvard town administrator, and said we can use their data. So we now have those data in front of us saying, okay, these are the big issues that are going to face us. And we have yet to have a conversation about, okay, so what do we do about that? What kind of proposals do we have based on those data? We also have another very interesting issue. I saw that Ken had proposed in his list having an emergency shelter, and that has been one of those discussions that the town has had over the years. But I don't know if anybody else attended the meeting with the proposed the Wood Partners and their proposed apartment complex at the industrial park. And they're proposing an all electric buildings with 229 apartments, all electric, because there's no gas here in Bolton. And I thought, and somebody asked, well, are you going to have backup generators? Because we have blackouts here. And they said, oh, no. And so we're talking about 229 apartments with no electricity for, I don't know how many days we had it. I mean, we've had them up to about 13 days during the first ice storm, X number of years ago. But boy, do we have a reason why we need an emergency shelter at this point.
Okay, but there's, I
So-
think the knee-jerk reaction to that is, yes, we all know about that. Let's make sure that it's down as a comment or as an additional activity. And there are a whole series of elements of that that you can put down, I think, without very much discussion. Electricity, fuel, transportation, emergency medical facilities, et cetera, all falling under climate change and extreme weather conditions. So, write them down. And then once you've written them down, we'll go back and review them with the group. And as you develop more definitive data and are able to prioritize your recommended action based on what the data tells you, then you can modify them as is appropriate. But I don't think you need to wait to do that. I think, to your point much earlier, Sharon, a lot of this stuff is known already. And you can, use a lot of what is, dare I say, conventional wisdom based on other towns' programs, the municipal vulnerabilities study, a number of other studies of towns around us that you can see very clearly is going to affect us and require action.
You should also be aware, Sharon, that the chief of police and the chief of the fire department are putting together a Bolton emergency management plan. They're in the process.
Mhm.
So that obviously needs to be coordinated too.
Yeah.
But the important thing here is that it gets into the recommended actions and ultimately gets into the implementation matrix. And then the
Right.
implementation matrix has a little management team that goes with it that makes sure that implementation is appropriately pursued. But again, this is not the be all and end all.
No, I'm just saying that the committee, when it gets a chance to, and we're having a meeting on Monday, to talk with each other and try to come up with some decisions that we all agree on.
Well, maybe a good way to do that is to have you fill out with Kia, and Kia's already started it, that portion of the matrix and use that as the basis for conversation. Initially, some sort of review of what's already been identified, and then additional suggested action items among the members of the committee. Kia, does that sound right?
Yes, I was gonna say, if all of us personally add stuff, I mean, the only bad part about it is you have to read down the entire column and they're all in different orders.
Yeah.
So you have to read through all of them to see if some of the ones you wanna add are already there. But
Yeah.
having said that, so what? It's, it's a good opportunity to go through, see what other people have put in. And yeah, I would say everyone put everything they want in there. It's a free-for-all. And yes, at our meeting, we're going to be talking about more likely our aspirations for this forum. So clearly that needs to be on this list. But yeah, I mean, I think this is a case where we're putting big things, medium things, and little things all on the same list. And Brian's going to have to figure out where they go.
Okay, so in general, I think the process we've agreed on is you take a look at the list, mark your X's, review that ultimately with your task groups, see if they have, there's some sort of consensus on what you've already put in, add more X's as is appropriate.
And it's meant to be a working document. Like
It
this
is,
isn't,
yeah.
it's not like we're finishing this by the end of June and then it's done. Like this is just a way of kind of keeping people focused on a common list of ideas.
So it'll come to
I also
closure
think
sometime.
you should make a rule that where you don't take any X's off, because if anyone on any committee thinks there's some crossover, I would err on the side of leaving it in there.
Yep. And I think that, Brian addressed that issue in my comment about to what degree do we indicate it? Well, any degree.
I think if you're questioning why a committee thinks that a task falls under them, add it as a comment. Don't take the X away from them.
Yeah.
Yep, good point. Okay, any more questions on the list? Okay, good. So we're back together at 7 o'clock on the 27th. We have a number of action items here. I think everybody has a pretty good idea of what they need to do. Ken, if you could expeditiously bulletize those action items so we don't lose any, that would be great.
You have the
And-
design review board, remember, coming on the 27th.
Yes, we do. Okay. Anything else? If not, thank you very much. And we'll close the meeting. Do I have a motion?